Welcome to HPRA's Google Plus Hangout event with the Nielsen Company. We're about to hear all the key findings when it comes to holiday shopping, music, social media consumption, Latinas, and more. So I just want to give a huge shout out to Nielsen, as they were one of our main sponsors for the HPRA Los Angeles Scholarship Program. So thank you, Nielsen, for all that you do with HPRA. Hi, my name is Steven Chavez, and I am the principal at Chavez Marketing and Communications. I'm also editor of the Latino Foodie blog. Our goal at HPRA is to be able to bring you resources like we are today. We want to be able to help you in your professional career growth, but also bring in information that you can share with clients, with colleagues, to help you be better marketers. If you haven't learned, or if HPRA is new for you, and you don't know much about it, please go to our website at HPRA-USA.org. Again, one more time, HPRA-USA.org. Please visit us and think about becoming a member today. So now let's get down to business. So for a few of you who haven't done Google Hangout before, you know this is a wonderful, wonderful platform. But like all platforms that are online and you're using the internet, things can happen. So we just ask that you please be patient. We're going to do our best on our end to make this conversational, make it informal, and have a lot of fun with it. We want to encourage you to ask questions, and we want you to do that on Twitter, actually. So you'll be toggling back and forth like true marketers do all the time. But follow the hashtag. It is hashtag HPRA Hangout. We'll be monitoring the feed, and I'll be asking your questions to our panelists. Now, it is with great pleasure that I introduce our panelists today. We have with us Nielsen's Vice President, Community Alliance, Events and Engagement, Ms. Stacie deArmas. You can follow her on Twitter. Let me give you her handle. It's at Stacie, STACIE-DEARMAS. Again, at Stacie deArmas is her Twitter handle. So welcome, Stacie. We're so glad to have you with us. We'd love for you to just share with us a little bit about your background and tell us a little bit about Nielsen.
Well, my name is Stacie deArmas, and I am with the Nielsen Company. I've been with Nielsen for about 16 years, working very closely with local markets, consumer research, design, and most specifically in the Hispanic market, working with our radio clients and now currently with television and community clients. Nielsen, as you know, is a global measurement company. Nielsen is in more than 100 countries. And, oops, I'm hearing a little feedback on this Google Hangout. Anyone else? Okay. Nielsen is in more than 100 countries, and we measure what consumers like you and I watching today listen to, watch, buy, lifestyle and behavior, also attitudinal information. And Nielsen provides all this information for our clients so they can better understand consumers like us, how to develop products for us, and how to better market those special items to us.
Great. We want to make sure that our speakers on, the audio is kind of, like I said, we got to be flexible here. Mm-hmm. There was a little bit of feedback, so we want to make sure speakers are off. And okay, let's move forward. So tell me, as public relations professionals, it's great to know that we've got a resource in Nielsen where we can actually work with your team to get insights and research on various topics, and most particularly around Latinos. It's so hard to get that kind of information online. There's just not a lot of it out there, as you know. So who would we work with at Nielsen to capture that information?
Well, that's a great question. Nielsen really in providing information on both market segments. Everything from the African American consumer, LGBT consumer, Latino, Asian consumer, and beyond. We provide all these reports on our website at Nielsen.com. We release them for the most part quarterly, but there are other special releases of data that provides all of this information for public relations professionals like yourself and like people watching to better understand the market, the industry, their clients, and how to better reach out to them. If they wanted some direct information, they could certainly reach out to us at Nielsen Knows through our Twitter handle, and we can connect anyone with our Director of Communications. But if it is truly just gathering information to understand the market, to maybe really do a great design for your client of a PR campaign, I would suggest that primarily reaching out through the Nielsen website would give you so much information and some nice historical information as well. Nielsen also has a microsite specifically designed for the Latino market, which is nielsen.com/Latinos, and there is expanded information on the Latino market and the Latino consumer. So that's all available, free for anyone that would like to learn more.
Great information. Again, if you're just joining us for the HPRA Google Hangout, you're going to want to follow us at #HPRA Hangout. Also make sure you tag at Nielsen Knows and at HPRA-USA. So Stacie, I understand you've got some general background information that you're going to lead the discussion with right now with some slides. So look forward to hearing and seeing more about it.
Great. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I am very pleased to be here today on this Google Hangout. Thank you for being flexible with us earlier with that sound. Thank you to HPRA and to Stephen for this opportunity. We are really looking forward to being able to share this information and, of course, have it archived for others that want to learn more about the market and maybe weren't able to join us today. We can go ahead and move to the next slide. I've given you, I believe Stephen's already shared with you my Twitter handle. Please feel free to follow me at Stacie deArmas on Twitter, also at Nielsen Knows. We have several Nielsen Twitter handles, and the one that we work primarily with the community and the multicultural community is at Nielsen Knows. So you'll see that, of course, on the next slide. And as Stephen mentioned, please do make sure to use the hashtag so we can follow any questions that you might have and answer them real time. Many of you participating today already know the power and impact of the Latino market in the U.S. So what we really want to do today is have a conversation and share maybe some deeper insights around Latinos this holiday season, music consumption, digital and social media habits, emerging lifestyle patterns, and really answer some very direct questions that you might have if we have the information handy, so that you can better understand the market and the trends that we see coming for 2015. What I can tell you with certainty is that every major advertiser, network, retailer, brand is working hard to try and deconstruct us, right, Latinos, to really understand us better, learn how to engage with this market. And so we are looking forward to this conversation today. We welcome it, and sharing some data that is forthcoming to inform and guide that conversation. We're going to talk in a little bit about cultural sustainability. Of course, we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into Latinas. We have a report that we released last year called the Latina Power Shift, which has really set the stage for the future of Latinas, the movement of Latinas from really caretaker to caretaker and breadwinner, leading in education and in financial growth and in shopping. We'll talk somewhat about that in the slides moving forward. I quickly do want to mention, though, as we're talking about point number 2 on Latinas, the Latina really does believe that she is 200%, 100% Latina, 100% American, and really has, one foot sort of on each side of that line, and can very easily move between both sides of that, and we will get to that. Latinas have had significant growth, and more likely than non-Hispanic counterparts to do quite a number of things, in particular shopping, and we'll touch on that in a bit when we get to holiday shopping. Of course, the last point we're going to talk about, certainly the growth of the upscale Hispanics, but young and connected. And one point we want to really drive home, and we will with data as we move forward, that Latinos are not just social and connected and seeking information. We know that all of us that have resources to access the internet are using social media. We know that Latinos are more likely to use social media. But the point we want to drive home is it's not just, again, social and connected, but really actively engaging in e-commerce, shopping, and banking, and more likely than the non-Hispanic counterpart to engage in mobile shopping. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we move forward. So to set the stage for what we're going to discuss today, we want to quickly share this slide that illustrates why brands and marketers and others are so eager to engage with this Latino community, and frankly all multicultural communities. As you can see here, the red represents the non-white Hispanic, the white non-Hispanic population. And over time, over the next 25 years, you can see that that percentage of the population is set to compress. Now, we know this, we've heard this, we've have been part of conversations discussing this, but the interesting portion is that the Hispanic population is really the largest population that is set up for the most growth over the next 25 years. You'll also see some growth in the Asian market and a little bit of movement in the black market, but the majority of that compression that's taking place like non-white Hispanic is going to be up and made up by the Latino market. So this helps frame the conversation for why the Hispanic market is becoming increasingly more important to marketers and the industry. The next slide kind of breaks this down just a little bit further, and this slide I think is fascinating because it really drives home the point of cultural relevancy. So we know that the Hispanic market will be growing, right? Everyone's been talking about that for quite some time. But what's important here, that doesn't necessarily mean that in-language advertising or in-language marketing really needs to pick up sort of that slack and that difference. What you're looking at here is that you can see that bilingual and English-Spanish usage has increased just over the past 10 years. So with mostly Spanish staying nearly the same and English only compressing. So this shows us that Latinos that are in the United States over the past 10 years are increasing their bilingual capabilities. So, but not at the same time necessarily losing their mostly Spanish. So what this really is showing us that the English-only Latinos are becoming more bilingual. There are a lot of theories about why this might be. Is it a boomerang effect? Is it first-generation Latinos that have grown up in a household speaking more English and Spanish? There's a lot of reasons. And if some of you, hopefully someone will ask me about the boomerang effect. I find that really fascinating. Maybe we'll get to talk about it. But what it seems to me that's happening, or in our understanding, is that Latinos are really maintaining their culture or coming back to their culture. And so what that tells us is with English compressing and bilingual coming into play, cultural relevancy becomes much more important when it comes to advertising and brand marketing. So what we mean by that is not all advertising necessarily needing to be in language, but there being sort of this Latino cultural nuance that is in some ways sort of an intangible that's woven into the fabric of messaging, whether that is digital messaging, whether it's advertising on television, whether it's through themes that are presented in movies, whether it's through music. But it is a really fascinating thing that we're trying to better understand here at Nielsen, and I know the market is as well, is what really is cultural relevancy, and does it need to be in language to be able to be effective? And we can talk about that a little bit, but I think this is really fascinating as we frame up the conversation for not only marketers being targeting their dollars more in their strategies toward the Latino market, but how they actually activate that. Any thoughts on that? Okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is fascinating because we have seen where we hear a lot about the total market approach. You're hearing about the whole idea that you need to be relevant not only in Spanish but in English. And I love the examples that you gave because I think for a lot of people who are doing Hispanic PR, some of the questions we'll get asked are, well, how do we do that? And I love the idea that you're going to want your storylines to have themes or storylines that actually incorporate Latinos or have that culture embedded into it, or even some music is sort of cultural cues. Language, maybe it's sprinkling in some Spanglish, although I know some people are like, deadly against Spanglish, but it's those, I think, through language, music, storylines, all of that really comes into play when reaching the bilingual Latino. I also thought it was really key to show the growth of the population. I know the Census Bureau talks a little bit about that growth is actually not happening from immigration. The growth is actually happening from my brothers and sisters who are having babies here in the U.S. And so I wonder if that's why we're also seeing, we're seeing the growth in the English, language being spoken in the homes.
Yeah, that is, actually you bring up some really good points. And one thing I think is really fascinating is, when you talk about cultural nuances and cultural themes, Latino cultural themes being embedded into marketing and advertising, and you talk about total market, these are themes and concepts that resonate across, across culture. And that can be seen just in everyday music, right? If you look at top 40 music, you can see really clearly that there are a number of songs on there that resonate just across the board with the total market. So oftentimes, weaving in these cultural themes that we think are, that we know will resonate with the Latino market, will also resonate to some degree with, with the greater market. So it's really an advertising strategy when you think about total market that benefits the brand at large, right? It would benefit because it is perceptible and the messaging is able to touch people regardless of race or ethnicity rather. So I think it's a really a neat point, and we've certainly been looking into it more, and I know that that the industry is as well.
But I remember seeing recently there was a statistic that showed films featuring Latinas or Latinos in their cast were actually more successful than others, and it was, for me, it showed the sign of the future, or when it comes to entertainment. Looking that Latinos make up about 17% of the nation's population, but actually purchased about 25% of all movie tickets in 2013. That right there is, something that tells me, in terms of if I'm a movie company, if I am in entertainment, we'll definitely pay attention to the Latino marketplace. And I'm sure it spills over like that in many different areas.
Yeah, and actually, Nielsen, we talked earlier about some of the resources being available online. There is a moviegoer study, and one of the things that the insights that we did find out was that Latinos were more likely to purchase movie tickets and saw more movies than their non-Hispanic counterparts. So again, when you talk about themes and trends and sort of the culture really in some ways almost setting the stage for what is mainstream. We see that in, as I said, certainly as you mentioned with the popularity of characters in everyday shows that we watch, and certainly in music and on the radio, and of course in movies. And so I think that's an alternate way of thinking for brand marketers is not, and maybe that's the story that sort of supports total market in a way, which isn't to say that that a fine focus and strategy shouldn't be applied to the Hispanic market. It absolutely should. But within total market, one of the interesting benefits is that by doing a Hispanic or bicultural focused campaign, you're going to just by default impact the larger universe of that target. So we could certainly talk about that all day and theories and concepts. But
Stacie, one other quick question though. I'm wondering whether or not you're seeing, from a marketing standpoint, are companies, advertising agencies, and companies now spending more in terms of dollars to focus on research around the idea of cultural relevancy or total market? Or is there information that's coming out that's showing us it works?
Cultural relevancy is a sort of a newer concept. When I say newer, I mean within the last 8 or 10 years. I mean, people are talking about it. I think the challenge is how to measure it. And I have some data actually in front of us that I can speak to a little bit. And how do you really measure cultural relevancy? How do you understand it? Because it's a nuance, right? It's something that is subtle, that's layered in, that is picked up upon and related to by Latinos, and picked up upon and potentially well understood by non-Latinos. But what exactly is it? Is it just a Latino face? Is it a theme? Is it a food item that's introduced? Is it the way someone says something? Those are things I think that are still kind of being debated. But what we can tell you is that the concept, the theme, is very important and does resonate. Based on the chart that we're looking at here, some of the data we have here, we know in this same piece of research that 9 out of 10 Hispanic parents want their children to speak 2 languages. So whether or not they were born here, and I'm one of those parents, right? I want my child to have not only familiarity, but with the language, but with the culture. And I was having this conversation, interestingly enough, with my son like 2 days ago. I was sharing with him I was doing this, and he said, "Mom, you're going to be famous." And I said, "Well, I don't think so." But I said, what is interesting, though, we were talking about, being Latino and the importance of sort of sharing our story and the things that are relevant and interesting to us. And so these things, I think, drive home for all of us. And I think, you mentioned that as well. Hispanic adults that we went back, and we talked earlier about the boomerang effect. We can, talk about it a little bit here. And this is more of older Latinos, I would say, probably 35 plus, I think, for the most part, or 35, 54, where you see Latinos who, and potentially even a little bit older, but Latinos who grew up in in sort of like my father, where there was no really other opportunities for him. When he came to the United States, he had to learn how to speak English in like a week. There were no other classes in English second language or anything. But what is interesting is that, so he very much sort of adopted this, American lifestyle, but he came to a certain age where he sort of boomerang affected and came back to his culture and just really wanting to embrace and own that, and that is infused in me, and then of course in my children. And we see that now with the younger generations embracing their Latino culture and heritage more than the older generations did at that point. And we actually have some statistics and data on that. Here's one point: 72% of intermarried parents, one Hispanic and one non-Hispanic parent, classify their children as Hispanic. 72%. And that is compared to, that's double. That's the current, that was in 2011, and it was double how parents did it in 1991. And you can imagine, even 20 years earlier, I'm sure certainly double from then.
Wow.
So, those are interesting stats about the importance of cultural relevance, I think.
Awesome. So we're getting questions actually from the field, Stacie.
Oh, great.
So again, if you are just signing on, you're going to want to ask these questions on Twitter following the hashtag HPRA Hangout. So the first question I have is, should brands do total market or target just Latinos?
Well,
I think it all depends on the brand.
Subject, and I don't think it's one that Nielsen can speak to. I think what we can say, and certainly what I can say, is that both. We've talked about it to some degree today, and it continues to be debated. I think both have their merits, and I do agree with the the statement that the ANA and AHA, and for those who don't know, the AHA is the Association of Hispanic Advertising Agencies, and ANA is the Association of National Advertisers. They came out with a statement to help define what total market means, and that's available on the ANA website, and I believe also on AHA's website, which is ahaa.org and ana.net. And the definition that they came up with for total market really clearly defines that these multicultural segments are an integral part of this total market and do deserve individual attention. So I think that's the most I can say on that, but I do encourage you to take a look at that statement that was put together by a coalition of some of the best thinkers in our industry, and really, sort of very clearly laid out the advantages of looking at each of these markets independently.
Right. I know it continues to be a hot topic in a lot of
You're not going to pin me on that.
Right. Another question we have from Edgar Mejia at EdConexion. Could the growth in U.S. bilingualism be in part #biracial and non-Latinos learning the language? So could the growth in U.S. bilingualism be in part biracial and non-Latinos learning the language?
I think the percentage of non-Latinos learning the language would probably be a blip on the radar. I mean, it's not to say that I don't think that that's happening. I don't think that it would contribute to the type of growth that we are seeing. And let me take I'm going to buzz back to that chart. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about English and Spanish equally, going from 19% to 35% in 10 years. I mean, certainly many people are taking up our beautiful language, and we're so happy about that. If I can speak for all Latinos, but I don't know that it would contribute, for 87% growth. I do believe that it is a result of obviously more Latino children being born to Latino families in the United States, and that embracing of the culture and the language, as we shared some statistics earlier, parents wanting their children to embrace that language and their culture more, and it really just sort of being infused in a part of their upbringing. It also likely has to do with the population growth in some of the key Latino markets. Think of Miami and Los Angeles among the Latino community, which we know have more children than the general market, and more children at an earlier age. So I think that is primarily that growth, where that growth is coming.
Okay, and now I know you had a couple more slides you wanted to share with us, or was
I do. You can kind of buzz through these a little quickly. I talked a little bit earlier about the Latino moving from caretaker to breadwinner, and I think I'm gonna I have some good points I wanted to share about. This piece of research came from a study that we did earlier in the year with AHA, the Association of Hispanic Advertising Agencies. The study was called Upscale Latino 2.0, and it focused on Latinos that were $50,000 a year or greater, and sort of their lifestyles and behaviors and habits. Some of the really important things that we saw among Latinas was their when we talk about the movement from caretaker to breadwinner, Latinas over the course of the last, really even 30 years, but most specifically probably 15 to 20, have had a cultural shift in the United States that includes an increase of education, not only the pursuit of higher education, which we have indicated here, but really acquisition in a more aggressive fashion, even than a Latino male. So we are seeing these women then, earning their degrees and subsequently leading their households financially. So it has, but at the same time, based on what we talked about earlier, sort of cultural nuances and this embracing of culture, not giving up their role of caretaker. So it's, and we see that actually even in shopping. There's, Latino women 2 times more likely than non-Hispanics to purchase children's clothing. And this is the upscale Latina who is also the breadwinner. Ironically, also 2 times, or not so ironically, 2 times more likely to purchase designer shoes, very high-end shoes. So you see this woman who is moving from this singular role to sort of this dual role of still maintaining those cultural ties and taking care of her family, but also taking care of her family financially and wanting to look the part as well. We see that a lot in that report, which is available online as well. You can see a lot of the trends in upscale shopping of the Latina woman.
Right. I know, just looking at my class, I teach at the University Public Relations, and I'll see, looking out at my classroom, it's mostly Latinas who are filling those seats. And so you're definitely seeing the pursuit of higher education being a key value and priority for Latinas.
Yeah, and, in fact, college enrollment for Latinas is 11 points higher than their male Hispanic counterparts. So, and that's one of the findings that came out of the Latina Power Shift. And there is actually quite an interesting discussion going on about Latino males and the sort of the what can be done to help improve that educational pursuit. There are so many opportunities now for Latinos, in general, to acquire resources and so forth. And there is a little bit of a lag with the Latino male that I think certainly the educational industry is trying to better understand and support.
Stacie, you mentioned a little bit about education being a top value for Latinas or an area of emphasis for marketers to look at. I think family. Are there others that we should be paying attention in terms of their passion points, ways we can create messaging and campaigns that will resonate with this Nueva Latina?
There are, and I would say mostly it's going to be digital and social media. So Latinos are, our Latinas in particular, very, very much connected, very social, index much higher for all of the social sites, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, really, very much engaged. And I think that this is a really wonderful opportunity for big brand marketers to reach Latinas on these platforms. There are some great examples out there. I know that Target has done some really nice work in that area, as have other marketers. Macy's, who I recently heard speak on a panel, has launched a really wonderful digital program that engages and invites Latinas all through this mobile platform. And I would say that would be one of the top ways, at least that we see, that Latinas are not only connecting, but engaging, actively engaging, and that is the key. This slide here really was just sort of highlighting where, the different expenditures and where Latinas are focusing their time and energy. I think that one of the most important things on this, of course, is education, which we just talked about, but also on, electronics and children. If you look on the lower right there, or on the right-hand side, you have home electronics, personal electronics, and educating children. These are all things that are, again, when you talk about sort of that dual role that in many ways is sort of part of a, cultural legacy, very important to Latino women. Tablets, phones, iPads for their children. These are things that we also see as trends emerging for the holiday. And we can move to the next slide. We've kind of talked about this already to some degree, so we can just highlight a few things here. Upscale Latinos, which we have been speaking about quite a bit here, of course, includes a Latina under the age of 45. We've talked quite a bit about the young Latino. Upscale Latino, we find, is demographically just a little bit older than where we find the bulk of the Latino population comprised, but I'm sorry, not compromised, comprised of, rather. But I think what's important is to understand that when you're talking about an upscale Latino with significant income and with an education, there needs to be time for the acquisition of this wealth. You're not going to see it, for example, in 18 to 24-year-olds, because there hasn't been the time that is necessary to be able to acquire the education and then acquire the, the job and the income, and then etc. But once those things do happen, we can really clearly see, and at an earlier age than the general market, that there is the acquisition then of items, home goods, for example, which would be to sort of establish roots, create a home, think furniture, durables, large items. And then, of course, the financial components very, very shortly after, investing, etc. And we see those at a younger age than we see at the general market.
Actually, Stacie, we have another question, but I think this is more general from the audience. I want to make sure we're addressing them as they're coming along.
Of course.
I think this is for social media. Should platforms be designed specifically for Latinos, i.e., the brand's name, and then Latino, you'll see that brand Latino, or do Latinos want to be mainstream and not singled out?
I think that is a great question. Ooh, I hear you know, there are several different examples out there that are taking place now. I know Dunkin' Donuts just recently launched an app entirely in Spanish. I think, you know, I think that sort of remains to be seen what is the best, whether something should be launched maybe in language or bilingual, or, you know, kind of what platform would really work the best to engage Latinos. My thinking is that something that is bilingual and bicultural would be better than something that is entirely in Spanish. I even see, for example, when you go to Spanish language television websites, for example, there are a lot of opportunities to consume information in both English and in Spanish. Thank you very much. So I think that remains to be seen and is something that kind of still needs to be evaluated. But I'd be interested to know what, you know, maybe what you think about that.
Yeah, you know, actually, one of my clients, we handle the social media platforms for them, and we're seeing they have set up a Facebook page in English, but they have another Facebook page in Spanish. So we are creating content for both languages, but we're finding that majority of people who are responding on English are actually writing in the comments in Spanish. And so our recommendation going into 2015 is to collapse the two. If we just collapse the two and have a bilingual site that we feed information in English and in Spanish and allow it to just organically populate with their obviously bilingual consumer, that would probably be more successful than having two separate sites. And they feel
I think that's a good recommendation. I also think it depends on the brand too, right? I mean, there are some brands where having messaging entirely in Spanish, you know, might make sense. But then there are other brands that really cater to both markets. Think Goya. You know, you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who hasn't purchased a Goya product, regardless of of culture and race. I mean, well, at least in Los Angeles, culture and ethnicity rather. Certainly, going to a website and trying to get some more information on how to use a product or a spice would be beneficial to have that in bilingual, but maybe having two separate sites would work best for that too. I think what makes sense is for each brand to take a close look at their product and their consumers and try and really understand how to best, what is the best way to touch each of those. But both theories I think are out there yet, and so we'll have to see.
I'll definitely be interested to monitor that, because I do see when a brand does come out with their quote-unquote Latino page, you'll see a lot of people liking it, but then you do see those naysayers going, oh, why are you singling us out? Well, we don't need a separate page. But I'm always, you always hear the negative as well. So I try to counsel the clients that it's people who are typically upset who will actually write a comment. People who like it in general, they tend to just hit like and then move on, unless it's something they're really passionate about and want to champion. And so it'll be interesting to continue to monitor that, yeah.
And it also takes us back to our initial conversation about, engaging in language, right? We looked at what's happening with the population, and we looked at what's happening with language usage. And we'll have, some more data shortly to be able to look at language usage. But if we know that language usage is sort of collapsing into, a bilingual bucket to some degree, so then the question is, how do we engage? It's really cultural relevancy, right? It's not language. People are able to fluidly, and we saw this through the results of the Latina Power Shift, really able to fluidly move between worlds, right? And I'm sure you have this experience. I certainly do with my family. Depending on where we're at or what we're doing, you can just kind of jump between worlds and between languages and between cultures. And so maybe what we're really talking about here when we talk about cultural relevancy and we talk about websites is developing something that has those nuances that we've been talking about, but still gives the consumer the option to consume the content in the language that they want, but maybe not so separated. There are several theories, I suppose, so I'd be interested to see what happens with what you're doing with this client after you collapse them next year. This slide that presented here. This is really just reviewing some of the information that we've talked about earlier. We've shared all of these insights. And again, you know, Latinos are just very engaged socially, digitally, with music, concerts, attending more concerts, paying more for them than the general market. So entertainment really being a very important part of the Latino lifestyle. A lot of data on that online as well. So that's all I have for these slides. I have some other statistics we can talk about if we want to talk about holiday shopping trends or you know, any other questions that come up. I wanted to make sure that we shared some of these insights so that they were available. Are there any other themes that are coming out of Twitter?
Definitely, Stacie. But before, I think this is a good time to remind people when you're following us on Twitter to make sure you're tagging Stacie at Stacie deArmas. Make sure you're tagging at Nielsen Knows and at HPRA-USA. My Twitter handle is at Steven Chavez PR with a PH for Steven. But I'd love to be able to go back to the slide that had some of the information around music, because I know music is very important, obviously, in our culture. And the fact that you're seeing radio. I mean, I saw an article that talks about, you know, radio stations that are going into, again, those non-traditional Latino markets in the Midwest, in the South. They're becoming very popular and becoming like the #1, you know, station in those markets. And so, as marketers and public relations professionals, beyond concerts and sponsorship of you know, tours and having music at our events, what are you seeing? Are you seeing any brands who are using music in their, like, let's say, their digital platforms or mobile platform campaigns?
Overall, music and entertainment are, you know, very closely tied to, Latinos are very closely tied to music and entertainment. These are themes in many ways that are sort of almost a cultural experience, right? It's a sort of growing up very much with music being part of that Latino cultural experience. What we do see and have seen pretty consistently for as long as I can remember is that Latinos consume more radio than any other group, and Spanish language radio quite significantly as well. You have, you know, I think that slide before had 94% 18 to 34, but overall, you know, 12 plus, you have 93.5% of Hispanics listening to radio every week. That is, and that's in the United States, so that's almost everybody. You know, that's just almost everyone, and that almost all Hispanics rather, and that is a number that has really stayed fairly consistent over time. We've seen a lot of interesting formats come out of you know, really born sort of from the Latino culture. We saw reggaeton for a little while. We certainly have, you know, bachata, banda. There's all these, you know, wonderful formats. Many years ago, many years ago, when I was first at an ad agency and I was buying Spanish language radio for my clients, there weren't even really truly formats. There was just sort of Spanish language radio. And so it's been really wonderful to see the evolution of Spanish language radio to what it is today, and seeing you know, how really segmented it is in a wonderful way. There is almost a format out there for everyone. It is still market specific to some degree. When you go to Miami, you have formats that are much more tropical, which you don't have as much of maybe in Los Angeles, but it's based on the population. So you know, there's really a lot of growth and vibrance still in Spanish language music and Spanish language radio in general. You know, almost more so than we see sort of overall. A lot of opportunity there still.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear from, if you can go, people who are watching, and if you know of any brands that are doing it right, that you think are good examples who are using and incorporating music into their social media platforms, give a shout out to them. If it's your client, feel free to use the HPRA Hangout hashtag and give them a shout out. We'd love to be able to look at those case studies. I know, for example, comedy is huge when it comes to connecting with Latinos. I mean, if you look at the growth and the success of, let's say, the Being Latino platform with Lance Rios, and the amount of comments and shares his videos get, because they're funny. They're funny. They're in culture, and I see that happening a lot more. I'm wondering, we know that your research says Latinos are using their mobile devices to connect, and they're connecting with each other. They're connecting with their family and friends. Have you seen any brands out there that are using the mobile device platform to connect with this Latina audience?
I have, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier. I mentioned Macy's and Target. One other interesting thing about social media and Latinos is I see, and you see this in the general market as well, but you see Latinos and Latino artists really engaging with with their audience through social media. And you certainly see that, of course, in the general market, but there, in some ways, is sort of a deeper connection with the announcement of the Latin Grammys and all these different things that were happening really recently. I was following David Bisbal. I don't know if anyone who remembers who that is, but or knows who that is. But he really engaging with his followers on what he was doing, where he was performing, and his thoughts on what was happening. And again, it's really in some ways more of a personal conversation because of those cultural connections that I think exist. Brands, of course, follow that and pick up on that, and they want to align themselves with artists, not only in the music industry, but certainly also, television artists, from novelas, from, actresses, etc. They want to align themselves with these personalities that have a strong relationship with their community and their followers. And so we are seeing a lot of that. I can't really be brand specific. But you will see that, and it's pretty easy if you take a look online, follow some of these key personalities, and you can see how they're aligning themselves, or how brands are aligning themselves with these people based on their relationship with the community.
And I know you have information you wanted to share with us around holiday shopping. We are in the midst of the chaos and craziness of the holidays. And I know for a lot of us in PR, we were doing our media pitching back in June to get into the gift guides, etc. But I still find it's important that we get a basic understanding of what are some of the trends when it comes to holiday shopping with Latinos. So you can share with us.
Well, Nielsen just released a report on forecast, and one of the things that we talked about were, of course, holiday trends. And the most important theme that came out of all of this was that multicultural households are really driving the increase in spending that we see this year. So this year we are expecting to see an increase of just about 2%, and a significant portion of that, most of it really being driven by multicultural consumers. So not only Latinos, but Asian Americans and African Americans as well. So we found that really to be very fascinating. Interestingly, though, is we do expect, while we know that multicultural consumers and Latinos are going to be driving this increase in purchasing, we do know that they'll be shopping a little bit later. So, it's, what do we call Latin? We're busy.
That's interesting. And so the point on number 4, online channels poised for even higher growth this season. Are we seeing that from the younger generation Latinos?
We are. It's interesting. For when it comes to mobile, we are seeing that, and we're seeing that not just for the holiday season, but sort of across the board. That there is more mobile purchasing taking place for Latinos than there is for their non-Hispanic white counterparts. But there's a few reasons. Of course, there's theories and reasons why that is. But I will say that the mobile phone is really, I hate to call it the preferred device, but it is really sort of the go-to device for accessing the internet for Latinos. So when you look even still today at connectivity in the home, whether or not there's Wi-Fi or not, in many cases the numbers aren't as high for for Hispanic households, but what you do see is an increase in smartphone and mobile phones over the general market. So these phones are really the conduit to the internet and shopping. So when you're using this phone in place of where you might be using a computer, let's say at home, that is going to lead to, that is the device to access the internet and to connect. So that's why you'll see in some cases increases in use of social media and certainly purchases as well.
Are there any concerns, or has Nielsen done any research on Latinos and their skepticism with putting their information online, whether it be credit cards, personal home information? I think what's happening in life recently, I know yesterday Sony Entertainment came out saying what happened with them and the film in terms of being hacked. This should be a concern for everyone. That this isn't just a Sony problem, but this is everyone who's putting their information online. I'm just curious, are Latinos more skeptical about that, and do we have any information on that?
Well, I don't know. I've seen some research on it. I don't know that Nielsen has done any primary research on that. But I do know that one thing that is very important to us when we talk about being inclusive of Latinos in all of our research and our studies, and of all Latinos, regardless of whatever status or whatever, everyone is. We certainly want the opinions and voices of all consumers. That's one of the things that we do address, that the information that they are providing to us is information that Nielsen will use for research purposes only. So I think it's a good point. It's certainly a very timely topic, and I'd love to see any research out there if anyone knows of any.
On this slide here, we talk about how multicultural households are the drivers of those who are spending more. It's interesting because I felt like the economy hit our populations a little harder than the general market, but yet it doesn't seem as if it feels like we're still out there shopping away for our families and friends for Christmas.
Yeah, and I think that's we have actually a little bit of research on that in the some statistics in the Upscale Latino 2.0. But the bottom line is it's really just a sign of optimism. As you saw through the Latina Power Shift, with increasing education and increasing income, there is a significant amount of optimism still. The Latino community is sort of coming in now to all of these new educational pursuits and banking and financial opportunities. Not to say that we haven't been there for quite some time, because I think we have, but there are more opportunities that are available to us. And so as those opportunities are taken advantage of and capitalized on, you will see there is optimism, and we do see in the Hispanic market, certainly. And with that optimism comes shopping and purchasing and still purchasing of homes. And one of the great ways to measure that, again, is home goods, larger items such as furniture and appliances. And we do see a significant, very steady, if not an increase, among the Latino market in the purchase of those types of items. And those are, certainly an indicator of optimism.
I want to go back to media and television in particular, because I know Nielsen, obviously, you do the ratings when it comes to television. And so tell me, is there any general information you want to share with us regarding Latinos and television consumption? Are we watching more of it? Are we using our DVRs much more? Are we getting all the cable networks? Are we watching Showtime, HBO? Are we still on Univision and Telemundo?
Well, Latinos are consuming media sort of across the board, and certainly have rapidly adopted this multiple screen, consumption. So we see, as we discussed the mobile phone earlier, we see the consumption of videos certainly through mobile. And an example actually of that are some of the new networks that are popping up that are bilingual and online only. I know Univision has a new network like that as well, and there are others. And I think that really just goes to show that there are there is still an appetite out there among the Latino consumer for content, and not just in English content or in Spanish content, but content that really has what we've been talking about, which is sort of this cultural relevance, this nuance. And you'll see that that type of content that is provided is indeed really sort of growing and being consumed at a more significant pace. Latinos about 11 hours watching television, watching online video rather, each month, and that is 60 minutes more than the average. So, again, when you think about the platform that Latinos are consuming their media on, and I think everyone, with it so fragmented, the consumption really is just the opportunity now is in the hands of the consumer, in this case of the Latino, where and when they want to consume the content that they want. So it's up then to the networks and the content providers to really develop things that are going to pique that interest. So we certainly haven't seen any slowdown there. 118 hours a month of traditional television. Latino viewing has also increased. And just like any other consumer, Latinos certainly love their their programming that comes to them through Netflix, Showtime, HBO, any other platform.
Right. I just know. I'm hearing friends and colleagues talk about that new show. What is it, Cristela, or Jane the Virgin?
Mm-hmm.
That have the Latino storyline or Latino characters. Okay. Well, anything else you think PR people or marketers should know or think about as we're wrapping up our Hangout today?
I would say the most important thing is to really definitely make your way to Nielsen.com and keep an eye out for some of the new pieces of research that we put out that will help you really hone in and better understand some of these key markets, so that you can, as you're developing your PR and your outreach campaigns, you have a really unique insight into the markets and the consumers that your client wants to touch and that you want to better understand for them. We have a significant amount, as I said, of research available, and always new things coming. You can also, of course, follow us on Twitter at nielsenknows.com, and we'll always announce there when we have new studies and pieces of research that are available for your consumption. So please do that. Reach out to us if you have anything. Feel free to tweet or email us. You have some of our information should you have any questions, and best of luck. Thank you so much for the opportunity today, HPRA, Stephen. Really appreciate it. Had a wonderful opportunity, wonderful time.
And thank you, Stacie, and to Nielsen for your continued support with HPRA. And so that wraps up our Google Hangout, our last Google Hangout for 2014. We'll be doing many more of these next year, and we look forward to having all of you become members of HPRA. Remember to go visit HPRA-USA.org to learn more about what's happening in your local market. We have chapters in New York, Miami, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and a new one forming in Chicago as well. So there's plenty of activity that's happening with HPRA. So from all of us to all of you, we wish you happy holidays and a great, prosperous, and a new year filled with abundance, peace, and love.
Thank you very much.